Welcome back guys, it's Colin with the Sun Pirates TCG and we are back with another deck profile. So, today we are talking about the Gundam Virsago, as you could tell from the title. This guy is really cool, but TCG player doesn't reflect that because he's actually the second cheapest LR in the set. He actually might be tied for the cheapest LR in GDO2 next to the Gundam Kamaras. But yeah, I thought this guy was really cool, so I built a deck around him and I took it to my local tournament and actually went 4-0 with it. So I thought whatever this deck was doing was cool enough that it would show off to you guys, so we can just get right into it. So we have 4 copies of the Gundam Virsago, our main core boss unit of the deck. This is what we built our whole deck around. We are being a very aggressive blue-red deck to leverage that on-deploy ability, where if there are 3 or less enemy shields, deal 2 damage to something. He also naturally comes with a Breach 1, which is really nice, lets you swing through blockers. Again, the fact that he does not need to be paired for either of his abilities makes it really nice and flexible. Like, yeah, obviously you do want to be able to find your link pair to get that extra tempo, but you don't have to, which is really nice as opposed to something like the Kshatriya, where you almost have to see your Merida Cruise to really get mileage out of it. But this guy, he just does what he does right out of the box, which I really like. And then for the pilot, we're playing 4 copies of Shaggy Frost. He really doesn't do much outside of being the link pair, which granted Merida also has to be linked to do what she does. So he's +1/+2, which is pretty interesting. I actually like having the 2 extra health, especially with the Virsago, he becomes a 6 health monster. And then during link, on attack, it gets +2 more AP, so the Virsago effectively becomes 7 AP when he swings, so he can even swing through something like a freedom blocker, which is pretty nice, and still do that breach damage, which I really like. So yeah, we have 4 copies of that. And then the last 2 cards for this new UNE package, so to speak, is 2 copies of the Gundam Astron. Admittedly, this guy is not very impressive, so the main reason why we play him is because of that line of text at the very bottom where he links with any new UNE trait. So in other words, this is the only other unit in the game that can link with Shaggy Frost. So I effectively just wanted 6 units that are capable of linking with Shaggy, so that I don't like get bricked on this, so to speak. Admittedly, the support 2 ability has come up for me before, so I don't want to completely discredit that. The on deploy has basically never come up for me, but otherwise, yeah, he's a little bit understated, which is a bit unfortunate, but it's just what I feel is a necessary evil to make sure that we can still like have our link pairs enabled. And even then with the Shaggy, it still becomes a 4/5 and it attacks for 6, which is really nice. It breaks through most bases and attacks through most blockers, so there's that. So the core principle behind this deck is that you're trying to be as aggressive as possible, being able to push your opponent down to low life so you can make sure you can get that on deploy ability off. This is especially relevant versus other aggro decks like blue-green, where you just don't care about your opponent's board, you just keep racing them, and then if they try to outrace you, you establish this link pair on your 5th turn, and then the on deploy will trigger, it will shoot down one of their small bodies, and then you will crash your Virsago into one of their other rested bodies, and then do that additional breach damage, so you actually win the race like that, because this link pair neutralizes 2 threats, while also dealing a damage through the breach, which is really nice. Even versus the slow blocker decks, this thing can still get through for the breach damage through blockers, whereas something like the Kshatriya will just get chump blocked a lot of times. While this lineup is less explosive than the Kshatriya and Merida, and much less the Banshee, this is something that feels a little bit more flexible because, like I said before, the Virsago does not actually require you to have the pilot to enable his abilities. So in theory, if I'm missing on the Shaggyas, there have been games where I just went back-to-back Virsagos to just keep shooting down my opponent's board, and then just getting in for that breach damage down the line was really, really nice. But then moving on to the rest of the deck, for our low drops, we have in total 10 copies of these level 2 2/2 vanillas. Technically, I should be playing more copies of the Hyzak over the Zaku Mariner to make it easier to conceal my second color when my opponent doesn't know what I'm doing, but it doesn't super matter. At any rate, we're just playing 10 of these, more than usual, as opposed to something like traditional blue-red cyber new type, because again, I really want to get on the board as quickly as possible to do as much damage as possible for the Virsago to be enabled. So yeah, I really like the vanilla 2/2s as well. If you guys know me in person, you know that I personally think these are the best cards in the game. But yeah, I just really want to go wide as soon as possible for this kind of deck. And then followed with that, we have some more vanillas in the form of Rizel. Just, you know, it's still a really good statted body, still attacks through Lefrith, which is nice. It also breaks the EX space by himself. And then since we're a blue aggro deck, we're also playing our 8 total pingers, the 4 anxious, the 4 gun tank. They do interact nicely with the Virsago as well, lets you reach up to certain thresholds. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, they just make some really efficient traits, especially since we're in a world now where people are playing Rick DS as a blocker. You can swing in freely with your 2-2 if they block. You can follow with the Anxia or Gun Tank to finish off their 3-3 blocker, which is nice. And then speaking of being an aggressive blue deck, we still have 4 copies of the starter deck Arc 78, 4 copies of Armor Array, still a broken pilot for blue, and 2 copies of the gun cannon. So 6 total things that can link with your Armor Array to get that link pair off. Of course, you know, doing this on curve is just extremely strong. And then honestly more important than ever because, you know, giving your whole board the AP +1, making your 2/2s 3 power to break the EX base so you can just like get in there is really nice. But yeah, not much more to say there. The gun cannon is still nice, even though people are playing Rick DS. There's still plenty of times versus blocker decks where I've gone Armor Array plus gun cannon to rest one blocker and then rest the Zawart that they have on board through gun cannon's ability, which is nice. Also versus the aggro decks, this is still very relevant, making this link pair to hunt down 2 things for free, effectively. So yeah, still worth being in here, in my opinion. And then for commands, 3 copies of Show Resolve. I almost won the 4th one, but I didn't want to get too clogged on it. It's otherwise still really strong, especially in simplified game states where your opponent are kind of top decking. You just like slam this, and then you draw 2 cards, and you'll be up a card on your opponent, which is really nice. But otherwise, yeah, it's just the gas back up, just like in other blue decks. And then last but not least, we have the bases. Still 2 copies of Corsica base. This card's still really strong, just playing on curve, especially going first, making your Tolgis token. And then 3 copies of the Vesalius. I have to value this one a little bit higher, because again, we're playing so many of these vanilla 2/2s, that I want to be able to pump it up to 3 power to break my opponent's EX base. Because again, the whole idea is to get my opponent as low on shields as possible, so the Virsago keeps coming down. But otherwise, yeah, 5 bases is nice too, especially in aggro mirrors. Just having that extra base to potentially flip off of your burst is nice as well. Alright, and here's the deck list fully laid out for those of you who just skipped to the end. So, like I said before, this is a very similar build to your traditional Blue-Red Cyber New type deck. Now, with full disclosure, I will say that this package is definitely not as explosive as your traditional Kshatriya with Marita Cruz, and much less the Banshee. So you are lacking a little bit of late game reach, especially with the Banshee versus the slower decks like Blue-White and Green-White. However, like I said, I really like the added flexibility of the Virsago not needing the pilot to do that 2 damage ability. So against the more aggressive decks like Blue-Green, where if you just draw the Virsago, at least he does something by himself, as opposed to playing traditional Blue-Red, where if I just see the Kshatriya and I don't see the Marita, it feels really bad. I feel just like a sitting duck with it. But the Virsago can just come down by himself and at least neutralize a body. And then if you get the link pair, it just becomes even better with the breach damage. So it's almost as if the link pair is just being more of an added bonus versus being a necessity, so to speak. And this is a very similar concept to what I've had in my previous video with the blue-purple deck, in that I really like it when we have flexible targets to put our pilots on. Yeah, the Shaggy Frost really doesn't do anything outside of being a link pair, but the +2 health actually has come up for me quite a bit, so I put it on my Rizel to make it a 5/5. Moreover, I've put it on my Gundam to make it a 6 health monster, which combo with the repair 2 is actually really nice, funny enough. So obviously, is it the best possible thing to be doing? Probably not, but I definitely feel like I'm putting up a fight even when I'm putting the +2 health on some of my other units, especially even on the gun cannon too, making it a 5 health repair 1. Against an aggro deck, that's actually really strong as well. So the long and short of it is that I'm trading the explosiveness that you get from your traditional Kshatriya package for more flexibility and, so to speak, consistency, especially against the aggro decks, which is something that I've really liked. Of course, I'm open to any suggestions down in the comments as well. I'm sure this is not the only color pairing that you can make with the Virsago. I just felt that blue was probably the most sensible with having access to Amro and Arc 78. But definitely let me know if you guys tried with the Virsago and if you tried like other color combinations with it as well. I'm definitely interested to read about your guys' experience as well if you tried this. But as always, if you liked deck profiles like this, remember to like and subscribe. And without further ado, thank you also so much for watching as always, and we'll see you in the next one.